What's up, you guys? Um, Never done this before. Never really posted a live video. But really, as of late, I felt burdened, felt it on my heart to really share my story, and how the Lord really reintroduced himself back into my life. A lot of people on here probably would think that I've always been a Christian, that I grew up with a Christian background and I've always just loved Jesus. And, I'm sure you see my posts on here about Jesus and God, and my music that I'm posting about Jesus and stuff. And most people would probably just assume that I've always been that way. And what, a lot of people don't realize is that wasn't the case. Though I did grow up in a Christian background, grew up in a non-denominational church, I fell away from it for a few years. And during that period of time of falling away, I say it like this, I probably, at the worst part of that period of my life, those probably 3 or 4 years of my life, I sat on the fence between atheism and agnosticism. I don't think I would have ever considered myself a full-blown atheist, but definitely questioned Jesus and Christianity, and wanted nothing to do with that, wanted nothing to do with Christians or the church, nothing to do with Jesus. My heart had grown completely hard toward that. I made fun of Christians for that time of my life, wanted nothing to do with them, and had definitely moments during that period where I questioned if God was even real, which is why I say I sat on the fence between the two, agnosticism and atheism. But I really want to share kind of, coming into that point of my life, kind of my own personal rock bottom, and just really kind of give you a better idea of how I encountered the Lord in a really, really radical way, and share some details on that. So, without further ado, to share a little bit more about my kind of background as a kid. Grew up in Chino Hills, California, and grew up in a really great church, non-denominational church. Incredible people at that church. Love that church with all my heart, and just amazing people that my family got connected to, that we got connected with there. And I'd say probably around my end of high school years, probably toward the end of my senior year, in the middle of my senior year in high school, I started having questions internally about Christianity, and grew up with pastors reading, stories about the Bible, all about miracles and signs and wonders, and Moses parting the Red Sea, and just these incredible miracles, and the power of God moving in these amazing ways. But in my own life, personally, I never saw that. I never saw these miracles. I never saw healings. I never saw all these things that the Bible promised believers that, that we would see. I didn't see that. And as the years compounded during that time in high school, I decided that, since I didn't see these things, the power of God moving in crazy ways in my life, I basically came to the conclusion that I wasn't going to believe in Jesus anymore. I really wasn't going to be a Christian. For the sake of my parents, I would kind of keep this persona, that I still believed in God and stuff, and would go to church on the holidays, Christmas and everything like that, Easter, everything, and not have issues with that. But internally kind of had these dealings that I didn't really vocalize and share with others, didn't really share with my family at the time, but had some big questions about Jesus, and that compounded on itself. By the time I was a freshman in college in Arizona, I continued to just validate my beliefs that Jesus wasn't real, and that Christianity was just, sadly, I would say, Christianity was just a sham, just, all these things about the Bible. There's great stories, and I wanted them to be real, and I wanted to believe that these things happened in the past and that they're still happening, but I never saw it, and so I concluded that because I wasn't seeing it myself in my own life, that it must not be happening and it must not exist. And my early years in college, that just continued to increase. I probably drifted away from Christianity, kind of smack dab into agnosticism and believing that there was a higher power, but not really knowing what. And then eventually, during this time, moving even closer toward atheism and questioning the existence of God. And during my college years, my sophomore year, I joined a fraternity, and just was living this pleasure-seeking life, a very debaucherous life, all under the guise of the college life. I would justify this as being the college life, and everybody in my circles, in my own little bubble, we were all doing these things, and I would just justify this as being normal. I normalized this. So going out and partying and drinking and experimenting with drugs, all that stuff, I just normalized it because the people around me were doing it. And living that lifestyle for a few years, my theology continued to drift away from Christianity and wanted nothing to do with it at this point. This was probably around the time that I was making fun of Christians and wanted nothing to do with them. And by the time I was a sophomore, junior, I ended up getting a DUI, living this debaucherous lifestyle, and my life was thrown for a complete loop. And this is where I probably started to develop mild depression because of my DUI. I felt like I was losing control of my life because this actually occurred in Arizona, which is one of the strictest DUI states in the country. And couldn't drive for 6 months, and then had a breathalyzer in my car for a year. Actually couldn't even drive for closer to a year, and then had a breathalyzer in my car after that. And I really want to be fully transparent with you guys. I'm not really going to hold back details as I share this with you. You deserve to hear, though it's very personal to me, you deserve to hear what actually happened in my life. And I'm not ashamed to share these things. It's just a testament to the power of Jesus and his capabilities in bringing us out of the darkest places in our lives. And for me to withhold, this information from you guys publicly would just really weaken the power that Jesus really showed in my life and the things that he really brought me to. And I don't want to weaken that in any way. I really want you guys to understand where I was, how dark of a place I was in at the time, and how deep of a pit Jesus dragged me out of. So I unfortunately got a DUI during this time in college, and it threw my life for a loop. Couldn't drive. I lived 10 minutes off of campus at the time. And it was very difficult for me to get to classes, the grocery store. My roommates that I was living with at the time would help me here and there, but then they had busy schedules too, and it just wasn't working logistically. And I think this was where I started to probably develop some depression. Probably mild depression initially, just because I felt like I was losing control of my life. I felt like that my life was being thrown upside down. I had no control over my life. I could barely get to and from class. I couldn't get to the grocery store, do these things that I needed to do during that time. And I had a buddy of mine that allowed me to essentially sleep on his couch. But before I even get there, after I had gotten my DUI, I ended up living in Boston for a summer, and had an internship out there with a company, and was doing the same things in Boston that I was doing in college. Once again, going out, drinking, all that stuff, partying, everything, just living that same life. And I think after my DUI, some of this stuff exacerbated. I was almost more inclined to do these things, to drink and all this stuff, because it was a way of numbing some of the internal dealings that I had in my heart. This depression that had been kind of swelling up within me, and the shame that had internalized from the DUI and everything else. And when I was out in Boston, one night I was out partying, and ended up calling a close friend of mine who I had kept in touch with after high school. And I called her at, sadly, 2, 3 in the morning, Boston time, probably midnight California time, because she was in California at the time. And I was complaining to her about why a girl in Boston wouldn't hook up with me. And that's where my life was at. Those were the things that just goes to show, kind of the life I was living at the time. But I'll be brutally honest, it wasn't good. And I was whining to my friend about this situation. And I remember her saying, and I was very drunk, clearly, when I had made this phone call. And I remember her telling me, Trevor, what's your address in Boston? What's your address? I was like, well, what do you mean, what's my address? She's like, I want to send you something. I'm like, okay, well, what is it? She's like, just give me your address. I want to send you something. I'm like, okay, well, what is it? And she's like, Trevor, give me your address. And so I gave her my address in Boston, and she didn't tell me over the phone what she was sending me, but a week later, give or take, I got a little package in the mail. I opened up the package, and it was this book called Jesus Is. And where I was once again in my life with everything that I had been dealing with, where I was theologically at the time, I wanted nothing to do with this book. I wanted nothing to do with Jesus. I don't know if I've ever admitted this to my friend, who I'm still good friends with, and I'm sure she'll see this, but I was pretty offensive by the fact that she would send me this book. I think out loud I even said when I opened up the box, like, don't try to change me. I don't need this Jesus crap, Probably said a different word, but nonetheless, I said something along those lines. And I took the book. I was living in student housing at the time, like a little dorm in downtown Boston, and I didn't throw the book away, but I threw it in my luggage bag in the closet, and I forgot about it. Okay? Continued living the lifestyle I was living, pleasure-seeking life, full of debauchery, whatever I could get my hands on to numb what I was dealing with internally. I was pretty much doing that, sadly. And fast forward through the rest of that summer, I'm back in Arizona for fall semester. Still can't drive. I still don't have control over my life in that aspect. And because my roommates that I actually lived with about 10, 15 minutes off of campus, they had done a lot for me getting around to different places, grocery store, classes and stuff that prior semester. Kind of got to the point where I felt bad continuing to ask. I wasn't paying them to do these things. They had busy schedules. They were having to use up their gas and everything like that to get me to and from places. I quickly realized, or at least felt like, I was being a huge burden on these guys. And I had a close friend who I'm still very close with today, who really did an incredible job just opening his place up to me. He lived right across the street from campus, and he had such an incredible heart, and was just like, hey, Trev, I know what you're dealing with. Unfortunately, that sucks, man. I can't really, he was like, I can't imagine what you're going through in terms of not even being able to get around and all the stuff that you're dealing with the courts and the DUI and all that other stuff. He's like, I live in a 1-bedroom, but I'm right across the street from campus in a 1-bedroom apartment, and you're welcome to just live on my couch, kind of couch surf, and for the semester or however long you feel like you need to, just to make things easier when you need to go to the grocery stores or wherever. He's like, I'm happy to take you those places, man. Like, I'm here for you. And I was super grateful and super appreciative, and couch surfed on his couch, but still was doing all the same stuff I had been doing. And at this point, I was smoking a ton of weed, so much so during this time, this fall semester in college. It would have been probably fall of 2014 to be exact. I was smoking so much weed, sadly, that I had developed a form of insomnia, to the point where if I was not high, I could not go to sleep, literally. That's how bad it had gotten. I was smoking to study. I was basically smoking to feel quote unquote normal. And my normal was just feeling any other way than sober, because when I was not buzzed or drunk or smoking weed or whatever, that I could really, get to grow very, very close to that depression that I had been dealing with, that I really hadn't vocalized to people around me during the time. And so fast forward through that fall semester, still doing all that stuff, and now come into winter break of 2014. And I guess the only good thing about me at the time, which is sad, but the only good thing in my heart at the time was, I'm going to be home for winter break, back at my parents' house in California for about a month. And I had become very, very reliant on smoking to just feel normal and to sleep in a normal way. And I knew, being the oldest of two younger brothers, that it was not right for me to bring those types of things, weed, back into my parents' place and around my family and around my brothers. And so I decided not to do that. Now, once again, I had been doing a lot of that for months on end, every day pretty much, sadly, and had become extremely, extremely reliant on it. And this is when things started to get a little weird. I was home probably for 1 or 2 days, and then things started to get very strange. I started to develop a mild form of anxiety at the time that I didn't have. It was more like a paranoia, that as each day progressed, probably the second or third day of me coming home, and I was trying to just hide it from my family and from my parents, it just got exponentially worse. And to the point where this paranoia, or this anxiety that I had never experienced before, I've actually never experienced it since then, thank God, it just began to rear its ugly head a couple days into me being home. And it almost had turned into a full-blown fear, to the point where I'm home, probably day 3 of me being home. It's 2 or 3 in the morning, and I can't go to sleep. I've been having trouble sleeping for the last couple days. I was able to sleep a little bit, but obviously not a lot. It's not like I went 3 days with no sleep. That didn't happen, but wasn't able to sleep, as good as I was used to. And once again, this is like the 3rd day of me being home, 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm having trouble sleeping. And this anxiety, or this paranoia that it started out to be, has now turned into this full-blown fear and panic and terror, to the point where my heart was palpitating. I felt like I was having a heart attack, and I was fully convinced, I'll be honest, I was fully convinced I was going to die. 2, 3 in the morning, I am absolutely convinced I'm going to die. Any of you listening to this would be like, okay, that's probably some sort of psychosis episode or whatever. Probably had to do with, the withdrawals from smoking and all that stuff. Sure, you can call it medical, whatever you want to do. That's totally fine. But in hindsight, it even started to seem even like kind of spiritual, in my opinion, because that terror, that panic, that fear that I was experiencing, I was convinced that I was also hearing voices. Like, it was not bad. It was not good. It was really, really bad. And in that very moment, I was convinced that I was going to die on the spot. Like, that's what I've literally thought that I'm in the bedroom downstairs in my parents' house, and this is it. I'm taking one of my final breaths. And to kind of give you a little bit of background on where I was, once again, theologically, just one more story before I kind of share what happened next. That semester where I came back from Boston, fall semester, my actual roommate, that lived in my place, about 15 minutes off campus, he had ran into a campus evangelist, these Christian guys that go around and, just share about Jesus and the gospel. And for years, I was the best person probably at the University of Arizona in avoiding these people. And I wanted nothing to do with them. I would see them from, across the mall, which is like the big lawn area in the center of campus. And I wanted nothing to do with them at all, and was very good at avoiding them. I'd see them across the the lawn or coming toward me, a few hundred feet away, and I would beeline in the opposite direction. And interestingly enough, one of my roommates runs into one of these guys, and they're very noticeable on campus a lot of times because they were older guys usually, They definitely didn't look like, the average age of a college student, maybe in their mid to late 30s, and with backpacks on. And my roommate runs into one of these guys and comes to me one day. I came home actually from crowd surfing at my other friend's place that lived across the street. I actually went back to my place to get more clothes because my clothes were at my actual place 10-15 minutes across campus, or from campus where I actually lived. And talked to one of my roommates, and he was like, "Hey Trevor, just want to let you know, dude, I ran into one of those Christian guys, and he wants to meet with me. Not sure if you want to or if you'd be willing to do this, but I don't really feel comfortable meeting with him one-on-one. I didn't really grow up with a Christian background, but I know you kind of did. Would you be willing to meet with him, with me?" And straight up, I was like, "You know what, dude, honestly, I don't really want to. I'm not really into that. I don't really want to, but since you're, one of my closest friends, I'll do it. I'll do it for you." So, that next week we meet with this Christian evangelist guy or whatever. And, lo and behold, that was, my roommate and I and this other guy. I start meeting with this Christian guy, one-on-one. And to give you guys, once again, a good look into where I was theologically at the time, I remember meeting with this Christian guy probably once a week, give or take, for the next month and a half. And especially the first few meetings, I'd meet with him and I'd have all these reasons why I thought Jesus wasn't real. I'd have all these reasons why I was questioning God. I would come with like little premeditated lists in my head of, what I was going to say to try to rebuttal what he would say based on scripture and stuff. And in hindsight, I really have a lot of respect and patience for this gentleman who I, still keep in touch with here and there through social media. So I'm sure he'll see this as well. And obviously God was working through it, from the start and really trying to tug at my heart, but I was not seeing him, and I didn't want anything to do with him, Jesus, all that stuff. Now, fast forward to my bedroom in my parents' house. I'm having this full-blown panic attack. I'm literally on my knees, convinced I'm about to die, feeling like I'm hearing voices. Like, it just was not good at all. And this experience is so vivid in my mind that I feel like I can see it so clearly. It feels like it was yesterday. It was December 23rd of 2014. The fact that I remembered this date just goes to show how impactful this day was, this moment was. But I end up dropping to my knees in the bedroom that I was in downstairs in my parents' house. And I literally dropped to my knees. I looked up to the ceiling and I said, God, and then I said, Jesus. I go, God, Jesus, if you're real, and I'm looking up on my knees, literally looking up at my ceiling, if you're real, prove it to me by taking whatever this is away from me, this fear, this panic, this terror that I was literally experiencing, this feeling that I was about to die, all of this. Prove to me you're real, Jesus, by taking away from me whatever this is, and I promise you I will live my life for you. And when I said that, I distinctly remember being on my knees looking up at the ceiling in my bedroom in my parents' house, and then looking to my right. And then at the time in the bedroom on the right of me was a desk, and on the desk there were a bunch of books lined up on the desk, and it was like tunnel vision. Once again, this is 2:30ish in the morning, give or take. And it was as if I only saw one book. There were a bunch of other books lined up. I only saw one book. Tunnel vision, literally only saw one book that was standing out to me, and it was that Jesus Is book that my friend had sent me while I was in Boston. And for some reason, I don't know why, obviously I know why now, but at the time I didn't know why, but I just knew in my heart that I needed to read this book. Once again, this isn't 2 p.m. or 5 p.m. in the evening. This was 2:33 in the morning, and I just knew that I needed to read this book. So I got up, I grabbed the book, I sat down on the couch in the bedroom, and I started reading. 5 pages in, 10 pages in, 20 pages in. Once again, this is 2:33 in the morning. 25 pages in, about 25 pages in, I started feeling this literally tangible peace. And by tangible, I mean like physical peace. It was physical. It was not mental. It was physical peace and presence that I hadn't felt since I was a kid. And for that reason only, I kept reading. I was 15, 20 pages in, and I had these little, like epiphanies here and there as I was reading through the book. I'm like, okay, like that makes sense. Okay, these little understandings. Okay, that makes sense. Kind of connecting with little things in the book. But the only thing that really kept me reading was not only was I feeling this peace that came on slowly, this physical peace that I hadn't felt for literally a decade plus, really. But at the same time, simultaneously, the fear, the panic, the anxiety, that whatever it was I was just experiencing 20 minutes earlier was also starting to slowly lift. So once again, for that reason really only, I kept reading. 30 pages in, 40 pages in. I probably read 40 to 50 pages that night. By that time, it's 3-ish in the morning, 3:30 in the morning. And I was finally able to go to sleep. And I wake up the next morning, and nothing really felt different. There wasn't really anything different about me. I was able to go to sleep. I felt a lot more rested than I had the last couple days. But when I say I had this radical encounter from the Lord, it wasn't until the following night. So the next day after, finally being able to go to sleep, I felt pretty much the same, kind of different in a good way, but, didn't have the crazy fear, panic that I had, but, it wasn't life altering. I didn't just seem, totally different the next day. But when I say, once again, my radical encounter that I really talk about was not until this next night. So once again, it's the following night now, 2 or 3 in the morning. And the best way I can describe this or put this in the words, because it's so hard to put this encounter into words, and it's really hard just to put spiritual encounters into words in general. But the best way I can put this into words is I opened up my eyes, and I was like, it was as if I was already crying. It's so weird, but it was 2 or 3 in the morning. I opened up my eyes. I was sleeping, opened up my eyes, and I could feel tears already coming down my face, and I was hyperventilating. Now, once again, remember, 24 hours earlier, I was hyperventilating, heart palpitating, hyperventilating, full of fear, terror, panic. I'm about to die. This is it. I'm taking my last breath. 24 hours later, after praying to a God that I not only didn't believe in, but I made fun of, that I ridiculed his followers. I wanted nothing to do with Christians. 24 hours later, after praying this prayer that I only prayed out of pure desperation, that was the only reason that drove me to this point, my own little personal rock bottom. And my rock and that rock bottom in my life just happened to be Jesus. And 24 hours later, I opened my eyes from being asleep. Tears are running down my face. I'm hyperventilating again, but now I am filled like to the brim and overwhelmed with the most love and joy, to the point where it's honestly going to bring me to tears thinking about it. This was like such a powerful experience, but the most love and joy and peace and hope and euphoria and thankfulness and gratitude, and it was so overwhelming to the point where, and I will be fully transparent again, during that time in my life, I had experimented with drugs where if anybody knew what euphoria felt like, it was me. And in this moment where I'm so overwhelmed with peace and joy and love and hope and gratitude and all these things just combined into one experience, and I'm hyperventilating and like trembling, literally physically trembling, shaking. Every drug that I had tried during that season in my life, experimented with, combined together and multiplied by 1,000, paled, and I'm not exaggerating, paled to what I was experiencing in this moment. The most peace, joy, love, hope, etc. that I have, euphoria that I have ever felt up until that point. And I knew in my heart of hearts that Jesus, not God, not just God, but Jesus, because once again, I prayed to Jesus. I did not pray to Allah, Buddha, Muhammad. I prayed to Jesus. I picked up a book called Jesus Is. 24 hours later, out of, a place of pure desperation, I knew that Jesus was answering my prayer of desperation. Remember, 24 hours earlier, God, Jesus, if you are real, prove it by taking whatever this is away from me, and if you do, I will live my life for you. I knew in my heart of hearts that he was removing all this stuff. I couldn't explain it at the time, but it was as if a 50-pound weight had lifted off of me. And I was so overwhelmed with all these emotions that I had not felt to this day in that capacity. But I didn't truly know and fully understand what had happened, honestly, until the next day. I knew in my heart of hearts that Jesus was answering my prayer, but I really didn't understand to what extent. So now, after pretty much trembling and hyperventilating and being so overwhelmed for probably 30 minutes, like literally, probably 35 minutes straight, I was finally able to go back to sleep. I wake up the next day, and this is when I realized like what had actually happened, like what really happened, to the extent of what Jesus did in my life, the extent of how his power manifested in my life that quick, 24 hours later, after this, probably the most authentic, real prayer that I've ever prayed. And it was purely out of desperation. During that time, up until that point, I cussed like a sailor unless I was around my parents. Once again, full transparency, guys. I'm not ashamed to share all this stuff with you. I'm not going to water down what Jesus actually did in my life. I cussed like a sailor. I was, very, very reliant on weed at the time. I was very reliant on alcohol. If I wasn't drunk or buzzed, once again, it was my way of numbing some of the stuff I was dealing with internally. I wanted to be drunk or at a minimum buzz, just to numb and suppress all this stuff that I was dealing with on the inside of me. And once again, full transparency, I was heavily addicted to pornography for probably 10 years. Up until that point, I had burned thousands upon thousands upon thousands upon thousands of images in my mind of women up until that point, through that addiction in particular. And I'm not exaggerating when I say this. That next day when I woke up, my cussing habit was gone. I didn't have an urge to cuss. Once again, couldn't control it usually, but I would just cuss unless I was around, family members or friends or whoever, or parents, whatever it was. Other than that, I would cuss pretty uncontrollably. My strong urge and desire to be drunk or at a minimum buzzed or to be high, those were just gone, just completely gone, just boom, gone. My depression was just gone. Literally, my sadness was just gone. Not only as it relates to pornography was my urge to do that and to look at that stuff just gone, but it was as if Jesus took his blood and washed my conscience clean of the thousands upon thousands upon thousands upon thousands of images that I had burned probably into my mind over a decade. And I'm being, once again, fully transparent about this. I'm not ashamed to say it. To this day, I don't struggle with any of those things. To this day, and my wife can vouch for me. She is the witness, the only human on this planet that really can look into my life with all of those things and can tell me that when her and I first dated, when I was not, didn't want anything to do with Christians, I struggled with all those things, and all of those things were a major issue in our relationship. We broke up for a year and a half. It was during this year and a half period that I had, had this experience, this encounter with the Lord, that I was delivered of things that had me in bondage, some of which had lasted for 10 plus years. And to this day, I've been free of all those things. All of them. Literally all of them. Have I drinking since then, here and there? Yes. But what's interesting about that is that back at that time in my life, I don't drink anymore, to be completely honest. But since that point, so this was back in 2014, I drink here and there. But what I noticed really quickly was that those things, those substances that were my source of peace at the time, they were the only things that gave me this peace that went away as quickly as I experienced it. If I was buzzed, I would have this sense of peace. But once I wasn't buzzed, it was gone, and then I noticed after having this encounter and really experiencing the Lord in new ways and really growing closer to him over the years, that I had a source of peace. And to this day, I have the sustained source of peace and joy and love and hope and all of those things that I had experienced at an exponential level, exponentially, greater level than I normally do. Those are just sustained in me. And when I would drink, or when I would, even smoked a handful of times after that encounter, it was as if those things were taking my peace away. It was the strangest thing. It was as if it had this reverse effect. One point in my life, those were my only source of peace. I now experience Jesus in a way that I could never fathom in my life up until that point. I have this sustained peace that I had never had before, that has never gone away since that point. And when I would dabble in those things, my sustained peace would go away while I was doing those things, to the point where I don't do those things anymore for that very reason. I haven't done those things for a very long time for that very reason. Now I want to share this with you guys, and I wanted to be fully transparent with you, to really show you not only how real God is. And it's funny because here in the Lord's wisdom, the first thing that had me run away from Christianity was the fact that God didn't move in power. That was one of the primary reasons why I had drawn up a conclusion in my heart, and I had decided to walk away from Christianity, because I had heard about signs and wonders and miracles in the Bible, but I never saw them in my life. Where's the power of God in my life? I don't see it. He must not be real. Okay? That was my conclusion. In God's wisdom, it took me to hit my own rock bottom, but in his wisdom, it was as if he told me, and I know he told me this, eventually I really sensed it in my heart, that he really said, you know what? You really don't think I'm real? You really don't think I'm active in your life and in every human's life on this planet, and that I don't love you and that I don't move in power? I will prove it to you. I will let you, in your own decisions and in your own free will, because we all have free will, get you to a point that draws you back to me. And in that moment, I will prove to you that I still move in power. If you don't believe in signs, wonders, and miracles, I will make you a sign, a wonder, and a miracle. Not only to prove to you that I move in power and that I still exist today, but for you to further experience and to witness me move in signs, wonders, miracles, and power in other ways. And now I share all this with you, and I know a lot of you are probably like, wow, Trevor, that's awesome, but what's this have to do with me? It has everything to do with you. The word says that Jesus, God the Father, whoever you want to pray to, the Holy Spirit, they are not a respecter of persons. God is not a respecter of persons. What does that mean? That means that he does not favor one man over another. So if he's willing to do one thing in one man's life, he's willing to do it in the next man's life. If he's willing to pull me out of the darkest pit I've ever been in my entire life, he's willing and ready, not only willing, but ready to do that for you. But here's the thing. God has given us free will. I, in my free will, decided to run away from God and not believe in God for a long time. And it took me to hit this point of desperation to even turn back to him. The word is also very clear in saying, seek and you shall find, knock, like knocking on the door, knock and the door shall be open. What does he mean by that? That means that we must seek him to find him. We must put in action in our own free will. We must put in action. Do we have to do a lot? No, but it takes us, even if it's a split second, even if it's that 5-second prayer of desperation saying, God, if you're real, prove it to me. In that free will, we give him the ability to move in our lives and to prove himself. He's just waiting. Why does he wait? People probably question, well, if God is so real, why is he allowing these bad things to happen? Why is he allowing me to go through all these things? God is true love. True love does not force itself on anyone. God made himself in our image, and in his likeness, which means that if he has free will, we have free will. And he gives us an entire lifetime to choose him or to not choose him. If he's going to make us in his likeness, we're going to function like him. If he has free will, then we have free will. And we have to freely have the ability to choose him or not choose him. Which means that, yes, in the natural, with our natural eyes, he hides himself, but also in the natural, he makes himself very evident through creation, through so many other things. And he waits for us to choose him or to not choose him. And even if it's a point of desperation, like it was for me, even in a split second, if you say, God, I don't know if you're real, but if you are, show yourself, reveal yourself to me, he will answer 100% of the time. I can confidently say that. He will answer. He will move in your life the same way he did for me. That's why what he did in my life has everything to do with your life. So I don't know what you're going through. I don't know if you're going through depression, addiction, divorce. I don't know if you're dealing with sickness or disease. I have seen healings. I've seen miracles. I've seen things with my natural eyes that I never thought, that I literally made fun of for years. For years, that I had fully convinced myself by the time I was in high school did not happen. I have seen these things happen with my own natural eyes. These ones right here. I've seen things happen right in front of me. People getting healed. People getting delivered. Things that my mind could never fathom. The spirit realm is a lot more active than this natural realm. But if we're not looking for it, if we just want to live our life, then it's really easy to miss all the activity and everything that God's doing in all of our lives. With that being said, if you want to give it a shot because you're at this point of desperation, maybe you don't have peace in your heart. Maybe you are depressed. Maybe you are on the brink of suicide. Do what I did. Give it a shot. Give it a shot. If you're at your point of desperation, or even if you're not quite there yet, Jesus, if you're real, prove it to me. Come into my life. Reveal yourself. Deliver me. Help me. Heal me. Whatever it is you're dealing with, he will do. Repeat those words I just repeated. In your heart, verbally, it doesn't really matter. He will move in your life. Just give him a chance. And if you say the same prayer as me, Jesus, if you prove yourself or reveal yourself to me, and I promise I will live my life for you, 100% of the time, he will answer. It may not look exactly the same way it did in my life, but he will answer. He's just waiting for us to knock on the door of his heart. He's waiting for us to seek him out the same way he did in my life. So I love everybody on here. For those of you that are dealing with stuff in your life that's not good, I just want to pray for you. Even if you don't believe in this stuff, it's totally okay. Once again, I made fun of all of this type of stuff for years. So I understand. I actually personally understand where you're coming from. But that's not going to stop me from praying for you. So Lord, everybody that's watching this video, I just thank you for what you're doing in their lives. And if they already know you, then I just pray that they would continue to deepen their relationship with you, that you would reveal yourself to them in new ways. And if they don't know you, if they don't believe in you, if they're like how I was and they make fun of you, want nothing to do with you, that's okay as well. At the end of the day, you still love them the same way you still loved me when I was going through all that stuff in my life. And I just pray that you would reveal yourself to them. And if there's anybody on here, whether they believe in you or not, is dealing with sickness, has a family member that's dealing with sickness or disease, needs some sort of healing, is dealing with depression, suicide, I just break all those things off. All suicide, depression, anger, bitterness, frustration, sadness, anxiety, fear, hate, lust, addiction, all this stuff that really defiles our lives. I just break those things off. Guilt, shame, condemnation, I just break that off in Jesus' name. And I just speak peace over your life, love, joy, hope, your will, Lord, in their lives. I pray that your will would be done in their lives. I pray for complete and total healing. Anybody that needs healing in their bodies, I just speak to their bodies right now from the top of their head to the tip of their toes, that they'd be completely and totally healed. I speak to every cell in their body, that every cell would function the way you created it to function, Lord. If there's even one cell in their body that has any sort of abnormality or malfunction, I pray that that cell would be revitalized, reversed, and would function the way you created it to function. I thank you for your healing power. I thank you that you are way more real than the world would ever tell us you are. And you are way more active in our lives than the world would ever want us to know. I thank you so much, Lord, for not only what you did in my life, but what you're doing and will continue to do in the lives of those that are watching this. I take power over all the power of the enemy. And I pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen. I love you guys. Sorry for the long video. I really felt like I needed to share this. Please reach out to me. If you need prayer, please reach out to me. If you have questions, once again, I can relate to probably most of you that may want nothing to do with Christianity. Not all Christians can say that. I can say that. I wanted nothing to do with Christianity. I made fun of it. I wanted nothing to do with it. And even in the midst of all that, the Lord revealed himself in an incredible way to me, and he's continuing and has continued to reveal himself to me in crazier ways since then. That's a whole nother story. But I love you. I bless every single person on here. I speak provision over your guys' life. Speak blessings over your guys' life. Pray that the Lord would just fill you with love and hope and joy and truth. And yeah, just speak all these things in Jesus' name. Have a great day, you guys.